created sample questions for each other, and were quizzing each other and all kinds of things. So this was a really remarkable study group. And you might ask yourself whether or not this was a success, like did this work? Well, it turns out in that first year when students did this, their scores went up by about 2 points. So it was very effective. It was a great study session. It worked. But on the other hand, the next year, I let students use that same study guide, and the scores actually went down. And the reason why, of course, is because when students create a study guide, they're really learning something, and their grades go up. But when they're just reading a study guide, they're not getting the information in the same way, and their grades went down. More importantly, I started thinking, students are spending a lot of time memorizing information for an exam, and that's not what I want to do. I want to change the way they think about the world, not just give them a bunch of information. So we decided to do something new and different. What we started doing was we started thinking about how can we get all 200 students to contribute to something much bigger and much more interesting. So what we did is we took all these students, and then we put a world map on top of them, essentially. And all the students then moved to a different place in the world, sort of symbolically, right? And then they become experts on those different parts of the world. And they have to know the whole history of those different places, the economy, the religious practices, politics, and so on. And then they create their information on the wiki. So we're sharing information about all these different places around the world on the wiki. And all the students are creating this information. And then some big questions start to emerge. Now, these are American students. Most of them have never been outside of Kansas, which is a fairly small, remote area in the United States. And so this is all new to them. And one of the things they start to realize is that they are very privileged in many ways. So while they're poor within the context of the United States, they start to realize when they study the whole world, they start to think, wow, well, maybe we got it pretty good, because they start to realize that there's over 1 billion people living on less than $1 a day. There's 3 billion people living on less than $2 per day. There's 800 million people who are undernourished. And there's 27,000 children who are dying of poverty today. And the question becomes why. So this becomes the real and relevant problem we try to answer as a class. And what we do to answer this is we try to create a game together. We call it a simulation. But essentially, all the students now, about halfway through the semester, all of them are getting a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience about how the world works, because they're all studying and contributing to the wiki. And so then we get these students together in groups, and they brainstorm how they could create a game that would simulate world history. And so we put them all in a room like this, and each one of these tables represents a different country or a different culture. And the students then sort of create their own culture at these different tables. And then we play the game. We essentially play out the simulation, which is to simulate, we try to simulate world history from the year 1450 to the present. So it goes through all of colonization, as well as decolonization, nation building. And you can imagine the rather turbulent history for all of the Americas during this time, right? The United States, Peru, going through very turbulent times. And here's what it looks like. The students create all kinds of new rules for how the world works. This will seem kind of, it can seem silly on the face of it, but it's actually pretty serious. For example, these Fruit Loops, every culture in the room has a box of Fruit Loops to start off with. And that represents their land, and they can harness stuff, harvest things from the land, and they can eat it, or they can use it for decorations. These are their resources, right? But what's happening here is this is a colonizer coming in, saying, we're going to tax your land, so you need to give it to us. Or they might just take over the land. And in this case, the colonizer has taken over the land. And they do this through, the students invent ways to have war with each other. So these are cards that allow them to have war against each other. And then a whole global economy emerges. Here you can see the Fruit Loops being used to create necklaces. And those necklaces become commodities that are sold throughout the world. And all of this is happening in a single class period. I mean, this is 75 minutes of class period. And this game plays out during this time. And then the whole thing is filmed on 20 different cameras. So you see here, this is a still from from the camera, another still from the camera. So 20 students are out there documenting what's happening. This is a really sped up version of this. If you want to see what it looks like. This is a 20-minute video compressed down to 4 minutes. So that's why it's moving so fast. You can see we use Twitter for students can send updates on what's happening in the room from anywhere else in the room. And here you can see colonization happening. So people using their cards to colonize. They